Last year, I made a trilogy of videos about monarchist movements in the Americas. I made this because of my fascination with political ideas in unusual places. For me, the idea of people actively favoring monarchism in places where there traditionally isn't a monarchy is, well, fascinating. And so, I got a lot of requests for people to make more videos like that. And so, here you go. Having covered monarchist movements in the Americas, we're now going to travel across the Pacific to discover claimants to vacant thrones in Asia. And the first place we're going to is the Ryukyu Islands. Today, this chain of islands are part of the Okinawa and Kagoshima prefectures of Japan. They formed a loosely united kingdom in the 15th century, and between then and its eventual loss of independence, it was subject to the authority of Japan and China, and sometimes both at the same time. The mid-19th century saw the return of imperial power in Japan with the Meiji Restoration, which saw the Japanese government asserting control over the Japanese nobles and annexing nearby regions such as Okinawa, Hokkaido, and the Ryukyu Islands, first making it a vassal state in 1872 and fully annexing it in 1879. The last king of the Ryukyu was Saotai of the Shou dynasty. With the annexation, he was forced to relocate to Japan, where he was eventually given the Japanese peerage title of Koshaku as compensation, and eventually dying in 1901. The current head of the Shou family is Mamoru Shou, who is the great-great-grandson of Saotai. And despite all this time, the Shou family still recognizes themselves as the royal family of Ryukyu, despite the fact that they still retain the Koshaku peerage from Japan. Within the Ryukyu Islands themselves, there's not much support for the restoration of the Shou dynasty, but independence on the other hand is another story. From the Ryukyu Islands, we move to the Korean Peninsula, where they have several claimants from the same dynasty to the vacant throne. Korea existed as a monarchy until 1910 when it was annexed by Japan. Before then, Japan had occupied the peninsula after the Russo-Japanese War, where Korea has been made a vassal of Japan, under which its ruler, Gojong, was elevated to the rank of emperor. After a diplomatic incident in The Hague in 1907, Gojong was forced to abdicate the throne in favor of his son, Sunjong. But the annexation of Korea put an end to the rule of the Yi dynasty and its emperor. After the annexation, the Yi family was held under house arrest in the palace, where their rank had been downgraded back to king, but with no actual political power. Sunjong died in 1926 and was succeeded by his son, Yi-un, who had spent much of his life serving in the Japanese military. After World War II, the splitting up of Korea between the Communist North and the, well, it wasn't really capitalist and it wasn't democratic either, so let's call it anti-Soviet South, the Yi family was banned from the Korean Peninsula by both North and South, partly for its collaboration with the Japanese, but mostly because they were a threat to the regimes of both Kim Il-sung and Syngman Rhee. The Yi family was eventually allowed to return to South Korea in 1963, but by this time Yi-un was more or less brain dead and would die in 1970. Today there are three primary claimants to the Korean throne. The oldest claimant is Princess Yi Hae-won. Born in 1919, she is the granddaughter of Emperor Gojong, through his son Prince Ui. In 2005, she was passed over by the Yi family for the position of head of the family by her nephew, Yi Won, whom was granted the title of hereditary Prince Imperial. Yi Hae-won disputes his legitimacy on account of him not being the true son of the previous claimant, Yi Gu, but rather was adopted. The third claimant is Prince Yi Cheong, who bases his claim to the throne on his descent from Prince Wu, the second son of Prince Gang, who had been the fifth son of Emperor Gojong. An interesting side note on Prince Wu is that he served in the Japanese military and was stationed at Hiroshima at the time that the bomb was dropped in 1945, and he would die the next day on August 7th. Yi Cheong is considered the de jure genealogical heir to the Korean throne by rules of primogeniture, but due to his father's collaboration with the Japanese and his apparent disinterest in the title, he has done little in advancing his claims. The current claimant with the strongest support, Yi Won, was born in 1962 to Prince Gap, who was a grandson of Emperor Gojong. He was adopted by Prince Yi Gu, who was the son of Prince Yi-un, the eldest son of the last emperor, Sunjong. Yi Gu was never able to conceive of a child on his own, and so he adopted Yi Won. However, it's uncertain as to whether or not someone who is adopted can be in line for the throne, or if even adoption was actually legal in Korea at the time that it happened. Regardless, Yi Won is the one who is recognized by the royal family as being the true legitimate heir. From Korea, we move on to China, and oh boy, where do I start? So, for obvious reasons, there aren't any active monarchist organizations in China. So if you were going to find any, you have to go outside the country. Headquartered in Malaysia is the Imperial Qing Restoration Organization, which is led by a Chinese man, Li Qichuan, who claims to be a descendant of the Tang Dynasty, which ruled China from 618 to 907. So wait, we have someone from the Tang Dynasty wanting to restore the Qing Dynasty. what's going on here? Well, you see, the purpose of this organization, according to their website, is to officially pass the mandate of heaven from the last ruling Qing dynasty back to Han Chinese dynasty. Now, this statement could be taken in a couple ways. Now, it could be that they want to restore the Han dynasty that ruled from 202 BCE to 220 CE. However, the term Han doesn't just refer to a particular dynasty. It can also refer to an ethnic group referred to as Han that took its name from the Han dynasty. And this is what I think that it is referring to. The last dynasty to rule in China, the Qing, were not ethnic Hans, but rather Manchurian. I believe that the organization wants to temporarily restore the Qing dynasty so that the last ethnically Manchu emperor can abdicate, allowing the mandate of heaven to pass to someone who is ethnically Han. In this circumstance, Mr. Li Qituang, who claims to be a member of the ethnically Han Tang dynasty, could inherit the throne for himself. However, there are some problems with this. To understand this problem, we're going to need a quick and dirty understanding of the mandate of heaven. Basically, the mandate of heaven is the moral and semi-theological justification for a family being in or losing power. If the emperor and his family maintain control of China, then that means they have the right to rule. Traditionally speaking though, once a family has lost the mandate of heaven, they can't get it back. So how does the Tang fit into all this? Well, you see, just because a family has lost the mandate of heaven doesn't mean they haven't attempted to restore it in the past. Reading through Chinese history, you'll find that there are plenty of instances of people claiming the mandate of heaven in the name of some previously ruling dynasty. So Mr. Chuan's goals are at least precedented. Well, the Imperial Qing Restoration Organization doesn't have a particular claimant that they want to restore to the Qing throne. However, there is a potential candidate alive in China today. Early 20th century China was a political mess, with its last emperor being crowned at the age of 2 and dethroned around the age of 6. Regally referred to as Zhuangtong Emperor, would be brought out of retirement by the Japanese in 1934 to serve as the puppet ruler of the Empire of Manchukuo until 1945. He continued to serve as the head of his clan, the House of Aisiangiro, until his death in 1967, and despite having 5 consorts throughout his life, he failed to produce an heir. So his younger brother, Puji, became the head of the clan, serving time in a Chinese communist prison for his involvement with the Japanese. He died in 1994, when the position was inherited by his son, Zhenyu Ji, who died in 2015, leading his son, Zhenyu Zhang, to inherit the position. If you wanted to restore the Qing dynasty, this is the guy you'd probably need to see. However, he, along with his father and grandfather before, all rejected their claim to the throne of Manchukuo or Qing China. I'm afraid that's all I have for you in this video. Make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell icon to make sure you don't miss the next episode in this series where I'm going to be covering the vacant thrones of Southeast Asia. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this video possible. Thanks to your support, I can continue making videos to educate and entertain. If you're interested in becoming a patron and getting rewards such as getting to see videos early or having your name in the end credits of videos, then you can go to patreon.com/granthurst to learn more. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.